So picture this, it's 1978, you're a Deep Purple fan. You've been waiting since 1973 for Ian Gillan to get his act together and make a record that sounds like the guy who sang Child in Time and Smoke on the Water. 5 years you've been waiting, and instead of heavy rock thunder, what you've been getting? Jazz fusion, prog rock noodling, fancy time signatures, saxophone solos, not exactly what you signed up for. Well, in the summer of 1978, Ian Gillan had apparently had enough of that himself, because something happened in a recording session that changed everything. And when you hear what it was, a moment so small, so seemingly trivial, you'll understand exactly why this man was done. I'll be honest with you, I am new to the whole Ian Gillan solo years. I grew up in the US. I was very young when these albums were released. When I became a teenager, I started listening to Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, but I didn't discover bands like Rainbow until much later. So this was one part of the Deep Purple family tree that I'm just learning about now as I do my research for these videos. And I must say, I have enjoyed everything I had heard so far. Today we're talking about a transitional record, and the one that started it all, the 1978 self-titled debut, the one fans called the Japanese album. Let's get into it. After leaving Deep Purple in 1973, Ian Gillan spent a couple of years finding himself, which is a polite way of saying he spent a couple of years making music that confused his fan base. By 1975, he had formed the Ian Gillan Band, and the musicians around him, guitarist Ray Fenwick, drummer Mark Nausif, were technically brilliant people who pulled the sound in a jazz rock fusion direction. And look, I'm not here to say those guys weren't talented, they were, but if you bought a ticket to hear Ian Gillan sing Highway Star, you were probably not getting what you came for. Gillan grew increasingly frustrated. He knew what his audience wanted. More importantly, he knew what he wanted: high energy, uncompromising, heavy rock and roll. His bandmates wanted something more complex, more cerebral, more jazzy. That tension sat there and simmered for years. And then came the moment. Keyboardist Colin Townes, the one guy in the band who was Gillan's wavelength. He brought a new song into rehearsal. A simple track with a driving melody, emotionally direct. He called it Fighting Man. Gillan heard it and felt something click back inside him. This was it. This was the direction. This is what he'd been missing. And the rest of the band, they laughed at it, openly mocked it. But it was the last straw. Ian Gillan dissolved the band completely in July of 1978. They were done. They were over. No negotiation. The Ian Gillan Band was finished. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Gillan didn't walk away from music, and he didn't spend a year soul-searching. He moved fast. He kept exactly one person from the previous lineup, Colin Townes, because Townes got it. Townes understood what Gillan was trying to do. And honestly, when you hear this album, Townes' fingerprints are all over it, but in the best possible way. Around Townes and Gillan's, they built a brand new rhythm section. John McCoy came in on bass, and this guy was not messing around. Thick, distorted, aggressive bass playing that gave everything a heavier foundation than you even got with Deep Purple. Steve Bird was brought in on guitar to deliver traditional rock bite, and Liam Genoki stepped in on drums to complete the lineup. This wasn't a jazz band, this wasn't a fusion experiment, this was a rock band, a heavy rock band, and they got to work immediately. Before I tell you about the distribution saga, and there absolutely is a distribution saga, let me talk about what's exactly on this record, because that's what matters first. First thing you notice is Ian Gillan's voice. See, during the fusion years, he'd been pulling back, restraining himself to fit the intricacy of the arrangements. Tight leash. On this album, the leash is gone. He's screaming again, that glass-shattering upper register howl that made him one of the greatest rock vocalists of his generation. It's right there, front and center, and it's a relief. But this isn't just a nostalgia trip back to the early 70s. The record was made in 1978, and you can feel it. There's a rawness, an aggression, a speed to some of these tracks that has the energy of punk running through it without sacrificing musicality. Gillan wasn't trying to sound like a pub rock band. He was trying to sound dangerous, and he pulled it off. Colin Townes is crucial here because he's the only holdover. His musical DNA is all over the record, but he evolved with a direction. He's not doing John Lord impressions with a Hammond organ. He's layering synths, building atmosphere, adding cinematic texture that makes things feel bigger and darker and more dramatic. The opening track, Street Theater, is basically a slow burn instrumental full of tension and dread. It sets the whole thing up perfectly. It's deliberate, it's theatrical, and the heavier tracks hit you and you understand why that build-up existed. Dead of Night and Vengeance are your straight-ahead heavy rock tracks, guitar riffs, trading space with Towns' keyboards, Gillan's voice cutting right through the middle of it. These are tracks where you can hear the blueprint of what the new wave of British heavy metal was about to become. The song Vengeance, in my opinion, actually sounds like something Kiss could have recorded in the early 70s as well. There's also Not Weird Enough, which is a fast-paced, highly energetic track written by Ian Gillan and keyboardist Colin Towns. It acts as a perfect example of the band's new musical philosophy, combining heavy rock foundation with the frantic, eccentric energy of the late 1970s British music scene. Then you've got Fighting Man, a song that ended the previous band and launched this one. And listening to it, you completely understand both sides. It's not a typical hard rock track. It's almost theatrical, built slowly from the gentle melodic verse into the soaring, emotionally overwhelming climax. For a certain kind of musician, the one who wanted to keep doing complicated jazz things, a song like this probably didn't seem too simple. It wasn't too direct, but that directness was the entire point. Gillan wanted to connect with people again, and the song does exactly that. The album is a hybrid. That's the best word for it. It's not quite the Deep Purple adjacent sound Gillan would soon perfect, and it's not the jazz fusion of the years before. It's the missing link. The record where you can literally hear a man turning his career around in real time. Now, even as this record was being made and released, the lineup wasn't settled. Drummer Liam Genockey played on the album, tracked all the drums, but when it came to time to actually tour, he couldn't commit to the schedule. He was replaced by Pete Barnacle for the promotional run. And then came the changes that would define the band's greatest era. Guitarist Steve Bird was replaced by Bernard Tomei, an Irish guitar player who brought this wild, almost feral, punk-influenced energy to everything he touched. And on drums, Mick Underwood came in, and you may know him as Gillan's old bandmate, going all the way back to episode 6 in the 60s. That lineup, Gillan, Towns, McCoy, Tormey, Underwood, is the one that made history, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Here's the thing about this record that makes it genuinely unlike almost anything else in classic rock. Most people in England couldn't buy it when it came out. British record labels in 1978 were not interested in Ian Gillan. They were obsessed with punk, new wave, anything that was current and youth-facing. A former Deep Purple singer playing heavy rock was, in their estimation, a relic. So every label in the UK passed, not a single domestic deal. So the band's management went elsewhere. Japan released it through East World, a subsidiary of Toshiba EMI. Australia and New Zealand got it through Interfusion. And that was it. It was a regional release by necessity, not by design. But then something unexpected happened. Music journalists back in Britain got hold of promo copies, and the reviews were spectacular. Word spread, the band started the 1978 Reading Festival, and by all accounts, tore the place apart. Suddenly, British rock fans desperately wanted this album and couldn't find it anywhere. Independent record shops started flying in crates of the Japanese pressing just to keep up with demand. The thing became a massive import hit in the country where it was never even released. It stayed a collector's item for 15 years, didn't get proper global CD release until RPM Records issued it in 1993 with bonus tracks under the title Gillan, the Japanese album. Purple Records followed up with another reissue in 1999. Then the legend of the record was already cemented. The Japanese album is the foundation, the moment of reset, the proof that Ian Gillan still had everything in the tank when pointed in the right direction. And with the classic lineup locked in and with momentum from this record building, the band walked into the next project ready to do something definitive. The album is Mr. Universe, and that will be one of the next videos. So check out this Deep Purple playlist, including the story of Deep Purple, which includes all side projects, all part of the family tree, White Snake, Rainbow, Gillan, the Ian Gillan Band, and so on. So thanks for watching. See you in the next one.